It started like any other night in Los Angeles: lights, cameras, red carpet vibes, and celebrity glitz. Chris Rock, beloved comedian and unfiltered cultural commentator, was hosting the star-studded Unity Through Comedy Gala, which was ironically sponsored by a number of left-leaning organizations. The event was packed with Hollywood elites, progressive influencers, and a couple of rogue political figures. Everyone expected the usual: laughs, jabs at Trump-era politics, and maybe a few viral moments. But no one expected Chris Rock to aim directly at Melania Trump, and even less so for what came next. Midway through the show, the mood shifted. The crowd leaned in as Rock leaned closer to the mic, his voice dripping with mock seriousness. "You know," he said, pacing the stage, "if Melania had $1 for every time she looked like she wanted to escape Trump Tower, she'd be able to buy her own White House." "Oh wait, she kinda did." Laughter rippled through the hall, loud, rowdy, unmistakably Hollywood. Rock smirked, sensing he had struck gold. "I mean, seriously, has anyone seen her smile in the past 5 years? Blink twice if you're okay, Melania." Backstage, cameras caught leftist pundits and late-night hosts howling with laughter. It was all fun and games until the clip went viral. Within hours, it was splashed across every trending tab on X, formerly Twitter, TikTok, and YouTube. Hashtags like #MelaniaHostage and #RockGoesRogue trended by morning. The blowback came swiftly, not just from Trump supporters, but from moderates and even some liberal pundits who thought the joke crossed a line. But it wasn't Donald Trump who responded first. It wasn't Melania either. It was Karoline Leavitt. The 30-something White House press secretary had already earned a reputation for her sharp tongue, steely gaze, and unmatched loyalty to President Trump. A former media firebrand herself, she was no stranger to controversy, and when she stepped up to the podium the following morning, the press corps knew something big was coming. "Good morning," she said crisply, her eyes scanning the room like a hawk. "Before I take your questions today, I want to address a deeply inappropriate comment made by Mr. Chris Rock during a so-called comedy gala last night." The room tensed. "Let me be clear, personal attacks on the First Lady of the United States, who, I might remind you, is a private citizen not holding elected office, are disgraceful. The insinuation that Mrs. Trump is anything other than a devoted wife, a loving mother, and a woman of great dignity is not only offensive, it's false." Some in the room shifted uncomfortably. But Leavitt wasn't done. "Mr. Rock is welcome to his opinions. That's the beauty of America. But when you weaponize a comedy stage to demean a woman for political gain, don't be surprised when the White House claps back." With a stern nod, she turned to the press pool. "Questions?" The clip exploded across cable news and social media. Conservatives praised Leavitt's composure and defense of Melania, while liberal pundits dismissed it as performative outrage. But the real drama was brewing elsewhere. Chris Rock saw the press conference live. And he didn't take kindly to being lectured by a Trump mouthpiece, as he would later call her on Instagram Live. "Man, these Trump folks are softer than I thought," he said, pacing furiously in a dimly lit room, phone camera pointed at his face. "She thinks she can come after me? You want to clap back, Karoline? You better come prepared. 'Cause I've got more jokes and more facts than you've got talking points." And just like that, the battle lines were drawn, not just between Rock and Leavitt, but between Hollywood and the White House. This wasn't just a joke anymore. It was war. The morning after Chris Rock's fiery Instagram Live, cable news networks had a field day. CNN dubbed it comedy versus conservatism. Fox News called it Chris Rock meltdown, White House in the crosshairs. MSNBC hosted a panel about freedom of expression and whether political comedy had crossed a moral threshold. But inside the West Wing, the mood was anything but chaotic. Karoline Leavitt was at her desk, calm, focused, reviewing transcripts and notes. She knew how this game worked. She didn't just survive the media circus, she thrived in it. A former journalist, a communications strategist, and now the face of the Trump administration, Karoline understood exactly how to take a viral moment and turn it into a national rallying cry. As she scrolled through the media frenzy, her phone buzzed. It was a message from President Trump himself. "Nice shot yesterday, Karoline. Want you on Fox tonight. Hannity. Take the gloves off." She smirked. "My pleasure, Mr. President." That night on Hannity, Karoline delivered a performance that would later be described by political commentators as precision media warfare. Chris Rock wants attention? He's got it. But let's not pretend this is about comedy anymore. This is about a long-standing double standard in American media, she said, voice calm, clipped, but firm. If a conservative comedian made degrading comments about Michelle Obama or Jill Biden, they'd be crucified in the press. But because it's Melania Trump, because she's elegant, private, and married to President Trump, it's open season. Sean Hannity leaned in, nodding. So what should happen now? Karoline looked directly into the camera. Chris Rock owes the First Lady a public apology. Not to President Trump, not to the administration, but to Melania. A woman who has chosen to stay out of politics, raise her son, and serve this country with dignity and grace. She's off limits. Period. It was a home run for conservative media. The clip was replayed on every pro-Trump platform, triggering hashtags like #apologize to Melania and #Karoline for the win. Overnight, Leavitt's following surged. Her words struck a chord not just with Trump loyalists, but with suburban women and independents who had grown tired of media double standards. But in Hollywood, the response was just as fierce. Within hours, Chris Rock announced he'd be going live again. This time on a special episode of The Joe Rogan Experience. Already trending before it even aired. "I'm not backing down," Rock told Rogan. "You know how many jokes I've made about Obama? Biden? Hell, I've roasted myself harder than I went after Melania. This isn't about a joke. It's about them not being able to take heat." Rogan, always the mediator, tried to strike a balance. "But do you think there's any truth to what Karoline Leavitt said? That Melania's been unfairly targeted compared to other first ladies?" Rock shrugged. "Sure, maybe. But that's the game, man. If you marry a guy who made his name firing people on TV and putting his name on stakes, towers, and casinos, you don't get to play the quiet wife card. She's been in the public eye long enough to know what's coming." The episode raked in millions of views. Twitter erupted again. Celebrities began picking sides. Alyssa Milano and Rob Reiner praised Rock for standing up to fascist politics, while stars like Jon Voight and James Woods backed Karoline Leavitt's powerful defense of decency. Meanwhile, Melania Trump remained silent, but her silence only added to the drama. The First Lady hadn't issued a statement, posted on social media, or been seen in public since the gala joke. Speculation grew. Was she hurt? Was she being protected? Was the White House controlling the narrative? Karoline knew the questions were coming. Reporters began poking around. CNN's Caitlin Collins asked at the next press briefing, "Has the First Lady spoken out privately about the Chris Rock joke? Can you confirm whether she supports your statements, Ms. Leavitt?" Karoline's reply was icy but precise. "The First Lady doesn't owe the media a reaction. She has more class in one step than some of you have in your entire newsrooms." The room gasped. Microphones clicked. And with that, the press conference went into overdrive. But it wasn't over yet, because the next move, that would come from Trump himself, and it was going to take the story to a whole new level. The media was already buzzing like a hornet's nest when President Donald J. Trump made his first public move on the controversy. Just past 6 a.m., he posted a fiery, all-caps Truth Social post that sent the internet into a meltdown. "Chris Rock is a disgrace. He should apologize to my wife, the beautiful and classy Melania, who has done more for this country than he ever will. Thank you to Karoline Leavitt for standing strong. True patriot." The reaction was immediate and volcanic. Fox News hosts called it presidential strength. MSNBC referred to it as petty deflection. Twitter, or rather X, was a tornado of polarized takes. Some rallied behind Trump and Melania, citing a line that should never be crossed: family. Others cheered Rock for punching up at power. But Karoline Leavitt wasn't finished. As the official voice of the White House, she took the opportunity to give a high-profile interview on 60 Minutes, and it wasn't just about damage control. It was a strategic escalation. Dressed in a deep red power suit, she sat across from Norah O'Donnell, her posture confident, every word measured. "Let's be honest, Norah," Karoline began, locking eyes with the camera. "What happened here is emblematic of the larger cultural rot that's been allowed to fester in our entertainment industry. A man with a stage and a microphone decided to make a joke at the expense of a woman who hasn't attacked anyone, hasn't made speeches or headlines, and who, frankly, just wants to raise her son in peace." O'Donnell asked pointedly, "But isn't this about freedom of speech? Chris Rock is a comedian. Don't public figures, especially first ladies, have to expect some level of criticism or satire?" Karoline didn't flinch. Freedom of speech is not freedom from consequences. If Mr. Rock wants to make cheap shots to score applause, he can. But he doesn't get to hide behind the comedy label when he's peddling humiliation. He crossed a line. That interview was the turning point. Karoline's performance ignited a renewed national debate. Where do we draw the line between satire and slander? Between freedom of speech and respect for privacy? And as always in politics, timing was everything. Within 48 hours of the interview airing, Trump's team announced a surprise rally in West Palm Beach, Florida. The stage was set in classic Trumpian fashion, American flags pounding classic rock, tens of thousands in red MAGA hats. And then came the moment no one expected. As the crowd chanted USA, USA, Trump stepped aside and motioned toward the side of the stage. Out walked Melania Trump. It was her first public appearance since the Chris Rock incident, and the crowd erupted. Wearing a sleek cream dress, Melania walked with poise, chin lifted, eyes straight ahead. She didn't speak. She didn't have to. Her presence was a statement. Karoline Leavitt, watching from backstage, knew it was a calculated masterstroke. The silent First Lady, dignified and composed, contrasted sharply with Rock's flamboyant and sarcastic persona. President Trump took the mic again. Let me tell you something, folks. This woman has been attacked, mocked, humiliated in the media for years. And yet she stands tall, strong, classy. And guess what? She's still here. The crowd roared. That night, conservative outlets exploded with support. Melania was trending. Karoline was trending. Even Barron Trump, now in college, released a short message on Instagram backing his mother and thanking Karoline for defending our family's honor. Meanwhile, in Hollywood, things were heating up again. Chris Rock was scheduled to host Saturday Night Live in 3 days. And everyone, absolutely everyone, was watching to see what he would say next. Back in D.C., Karoline prepared for the inevitable. Because she knew this wasn't over. Not by a long shot. The hype was off the charts. NBC's ratings projections for Saturday Night Live hit a 2-year high before the opening monologue even aired. People on both sides of the aisle were tuning in. Not for sketch comedy, but for a cultural reckoning. Chris Rock wasn't just the host anymore. He was the storm. Social media countdowns, watch parties, celebrity endorsements. This wasn't just another episode. This was a battle of reputations. When Rock finally walked onto that iconic stage under the blinding white "Live" sign, the roar from the studio audience was deafening. He waited for it to die down, adjusted his mic, then spoke. So apparently, he started with a smirk. You can't joke about dictators' wives anymore. The crowd gasped, then howled. I made one joke, and you'd think I tried to storm the Capitol. The audience laughed, but there was an edge. Rock was playing with fire, and he knew it. Now I got the Trump campaign's Barbie doll coming after me like I messed with her dream house. He paused. Karoline Leavitt, yeah, I said your name. You've got the stern face of a vice principal and the soul of a press release. And somehow, I'm the problem. The studio cracked up. But outside that bubble, reactions split hard and fast. Karoline was watching from a private location with senior advisors and media staff, arms crossed, stone-faced. One aide whispered, "He just turned this into personal warfare." She nodded slowly. Good. Then it's time to make it personal. The following morning, Karoline released a prepared statement. Not from the press podium, but from her own verified X account. The message was direct, sharp, and devastating. Last night, Mr. Rock doubled down on cruelty, mocking not just the First Lady, but every American woman who has been told to stay quiet and take a joke. This isn't comedy. It's cowardice hiding behind a punchline. I will not be bullied by stage lights and applause. And I will not let a loud man with a microphone rewrite the rules of decency. Mr. Rock, you've been heard. Now you'll be answered. The post went viral. Within an hour, Karoline versus Chris was trending across all platforms. But Karoline wasn't done with a tweet. She knew media warfare was about control. And so, she scheduled a rare sit-down with Tucker Carlson tonight, aiming for the audience that lived for unapologetic rhetoric. Carlson opened strong. This is no longer about comedy. This is about culture, about family, and about whether decency still exists in America. Karoline nodded, poised and unshaken. I don't want an apology for myself. I want young women across this country to know they don't have to laugh when they're disrespected. They don't have to be silent when powerful men try to shame them publicly. Tucker leaned in. So you think Chris Rock represents something bigger? He represents a worldview, she said. A worldview where cruelty is monetized. Where mocking a wife, a mother, a human being is called entertainment. And I'm here to say, on behalf of this administration, that worldview doesn't lead. It follows. It collapses. Her words were clipped, deliberate, repeated across the next day on Fox, ON, and conservative influencers' streams. But surprisingly, they also gained traction elsewhere. Moderate Democrats, particularly women, began voicing discomfort with Rock's approach. One viral TikTok from an independent voter in Wisconsin said, "I didn't vote for Trump. I don't support his politics." But Karoline Leavitt is 100% right. There's a line, and Rock crossed it. For once, the Trump administration had seized cultural high ground thanks to a woman who knew how to turn a joke into a national conversation. But then, just when it seemed Karoline had delivered the final word, a new twist dropped. A clip never aired before surfaced online. It was from the gala. Unedited. Raw. And in it, after Rock's Melania joke, another voice, off mic but audible, was caught laughing a little too loudly. A Hollywood power player. A major Democratic donor. A name tied to a 2028 presidential run. Suddenly, this wasn't just about comedy, or Melania, or even Karoline. It was about the future of the Democratic Party and whether they had just stepped into the wrong side of a cultural minefield. The clip sent shockwaves through Washington and Hollywood. The laughter, loud, sharp, unmistakable, belonged to none other than Governor Aaliyah Monroe of California. A rising star in the Democratic Party. Media darling. First black woman governor in U.S. history. Potential 2028 presidential frontrunner. She had built her platform on dignity, equity, and elevating the national tone. Now here she was, laughing with unfiltered glee at a joke targeting Melania Trump, a joke that had already been torn apart by a national firestorm. The video exploded across social media. Conservative outlets pounced. Fox ran it on a loop with a headline. Democrat hypocrisy exposed, Monroe mocks Melania. Tucker Carlson posted. So much for dignity. The left's mask is off and it's laughing in your face. Even moderate Democrat pundits were stunned. A New York Times editorial asked, can a party claim the moral high ground while laughing at another woman's humiliation? Governor Monroe's press team scrambled. At a hastily arranged press conference, she tried damage control. I laughed at the absurdity of the moment, not at the person. I respect the office of the First Lady and the dignity she brings. But it didn't land. Karoline Leavitt's response? Devastatingly effective. She didn't yell. She didn't tweet in all caps. She took to the White House briefing room podium composed as ever and delivered a statement that would define her political legacy. The dignity of American women is not a punchline, Karoline began. Whether you wear a red hat or a blue one. Whether your husband is a plumber or the president. She paused. We are constantly told that women should lift each other up. That politics shouldn't be personal. That dignity matters. And yet, when the cameras aren't watching, when they think no one is listening, those who claim the moral high ground reveal who they really are. Reporters scribbled furiously. Cameras flashed. It's not about Chris Rock anymore. It's about a culture. A culture that says certain women, conservative women, don't deserve respect. That their pain is performative. That their silence is an invitation for ridicule. She stared directly into the lens. To the millions of women who've been mocked, belittled, and laughed at behind closed doors, you are not invisible. You are not weak. You are not alone. The room went silent. It was the sound of reckoning. The next week, President Trump hosted a White House event titled Women of Honor, attended by military wives, mothers of fallen officers, nurses, teachers, business leaders. Melania appeared once again, seated gracefully beside her husband, warmly applauded by the crowd. Karoline introduced her with only one sentence. Please welcome the woman who never needed a microphone to speak volumes. The First Lady gave a short speech. She did not mention Chris Rock, or Aaliyah Monroe, or the gala, but her words cut through the noise. I believe in kindness, in privacy, in strength without anger. I believe that when someone tries to hurt you, you do not need to strike back with cruelty, but with class. The applause was thunderous. And the message? Crystal clear. Back in LA, SNL ran a skit satirizing the whole saga, but it landed awkwardly. The public mood had shifted. Even among progressives, the question now lingered, had the left gone too far? Meanwhile, Chris Rock began to step back from public appearances. His Netflix special, originally scheduled to drop that month, was quietly postponed. Sponsors started getting nervous. Governor Monroe's polling dipped, especially among suburban women. And Karoline Leavitt? She was now a household name. Not just as a press secretary, not just as a culture warrior, but as a new face of power in Washington, articulate, strategic, unflinching. Political analysts began floating a theory. Was this whole saga a setup? Had the Trump administration baited the media, allowed Rock's comments to explode, waited for a high-ranking Democrat to take the bait, and then dropped the hammer? If so, it was one of the most brilliantly executed cultural chess moves in modern political history. But Karoline never confirmed that. When asked about it on Meet the Press, she simply smiled and said, "I don't play chess. I just play to win." In the end, what started as a joke became a referendum. Not just on politics, or comedy, or the media, but on how we treat women, how we define class, and who gets to decide when a line is crossed. And Karoline Leavitt? She didn't just cross that line. She redrew it.